Hello and welcome to stage 3 of the Amgen Tour of California for 2018. We've got the longest stage of the week, just under 200 kilometers of racing from Kings City all the way to Laguna Seca for the second visit in the race's history to the racetrack, the car racetrack at Laguna Seca beside Monterey. We're in wine country here, heading out of Kings City, and there is the fabled corkscrew. It's a precipitous drop through turns 7 and 8 at that famous racetrack, not too far from Monterey, where the rich and the famous, the great and the good, and occasionally not so good, go to holiday on occasion and bathe in the sunshine that has visited once more this part of California. As you can see from the parkour, we've got a sort of a long loop to add in some miles and had a couple of climbs along the way as well for the riders, and it's a series of ascents, 5 in total classified, and it's just up and down throughout the day. It's going to be a grippy one. And there you have it, the conclusion around the left-hander at turn 11 at Laguna Seca Raceway. And who'll be sprinting to glory, or will it be a solo runner? There the profile indicates and gives you the description, the visual description of what's going to be a tough day in the saddle for the riders. No less than 3 Cat 2 ascents, and that final Cat 3 ascent coming within touching distance of the finish line. Last time they raced into here, it was a select group that was led in by Peter Sagan. I think we could conceivably see something similar again today. Here we have the 2 remaining riders from the 3-man breakaway that have been clear pretty much throughout the afternoon. We're down to the final just over 50 kilometers, 52.4 kilometers. We're over the second hill of the day, and it is this man here, the irrepressible Evan Huffman, who's gone clear in the breakaway. And he's got for company at the moment Hagens Berman Axion rider Ian Garrison, the young 20-year-old who looks full of fight, doesn't he? And they're being chased, well, by a lone rider, which is Robin Carpenter from Rally Cycling, Evan Huffman's teammate. He was up the road for much of the afternoon. He has, well, expended a considerable amount of energy in his efforts to try and keep Evan Huffman clear to what would be an extraordinary third success in this event over the last 2 seasons. But, well, there are those from the peloton that believe it's time to get racing. First of those is Lawson Craddock, who's been a podium finisher in this event in the past, and Craddock for the EF Education First Squad is putting his shoulder to the wheel in his efforts to get on terms and get across that gap. When he began this assault, he was just over 2 minutes behind. Now he finds himself having closed just over half a minute of that, so it's a pretty decent effort over the top of this third climb of the day. And now Lawson Craddock has a gap of just under a minute and a half, 1 minute 25 seconds, as you can see. Robin Carpenter's the next to be hoovered up by him. Just half a minute for Craddock to gain to have Carpenter in tow, and one wonders whether Carpenter will have the energy to assist Craddock in his efforts to get across and back up to his teammate. Meanwhile, the peloton have throttled back a little bit. They have just crested that climb as well and don't show too much enthusiasm for chasing it down. We've got the Bora Hansgrohe squad and on the front as well, the Quick Step team that are trying to set the agenda, set the tempo. And interesting to see these 2 squads. The Bora Hansgrohe squad, of course, have considerable interest in the overall destination of honours in this event. They've got the rider sitting in second position, Rafa Majka. And as I've mentioned, Peter Sagan has formerly been a winner in this stage as well, into Laguna Seca. For the Quick Step squad, well, I suspect they're thinking more about stage honours, courtesy of Fernando Gaviria, who took that wonderful stage 1 success into Long Beach a couple of days ago. Winching along and winding along in a huge gear at the moment is Lawson Craddock. 7th participation in this Tour of California, and he has always really been one of the star players. The riders up front, and their gap now up to 3 minutes on the peloton, and indeed it's starting to add a few seconds on Lawson Craddock as well, whose progress has been halted, albeit briefly, one suspects, as Evan Huffman on the front here and his breakaway companion Ian Garrison do considerable great work through these sun-dappled roads. through these leafy surroundings, heading towards Monterey and the big appointment at the Laguna Seca racetrack. Alongside me once more to run the rule over the riders throughout the week is Magnus Backstedt. And Magnus, fascinating stage yesterday. Today billed as one of those transitional stages that could go either way. It's to coin a cliche, a tough one to call. This could bring a lot of riders into it.
Well, I certainly think it could be an interesting final today, depending on how keen a few of the riders are and what the sort of overall goal is going to be. I'm thinking Bora Hansgrohe. What are they thinking? Is it GC for Rafa Majka, or are they trying to get Peter Sagan to add yet another stage win in Toro California to his palmarès? And well, obviously there's a few more riders than that who are capable of being up there in a sprint, certainly after a hard stage that this is actually going to become. Maybe the opening part of it isn't too bad, but certainly the final 30-40 kilometers are very much up and down, and we've got some short, sharp little climbs that we're going to have to deal with on the run into Laguna Seca. So I think it's kind of a half a GC day with an opportunity for someone who's feeling aggressive and want to maybe take a few seconds back on someone. Yet there is also that possibility that we are coming in with I think more like the classic men. We're talking, I think last time we came into this finish was Peter Sagan, Greg van Avermaet, Nathan Haas, Brent Bookwalter, those kind of riders who were up there, together with a few of the top sort of GC riders as well. So it's certainly not a stage designated for the sprinters, but it's also not one that's completely set up for the GC man. Yeah, it's one of those ones you really rub your hands in glee at the prospect of watching, if not necessarily riding, because it's going to be tough for everyone today. But as I've mentioned, it's just the sort of stage that tends to bring a lot of other riders into the agenda. As you've mentioned, that stage 2 years ago, Peter Sagan taking the win ahead of Greg van Avermaet and Nathan Haas, 3 fast finishers and big classics riders, and ahead of a whole raft of riders that would be climbers and or GC contenders who wouldn't have expected to get up in the sprint. But about 20 riders going into contest the finish. Are we going to have something similar today, or will it be one for the breakaway contenders? Lawson Craddock certainly thinks so. So too does Evan Huffman, twice a stage winner already in this race. Can he work the alchemy once more? We're inside 30 miles remaining. That's about 47 kilometers in new money on stage 3 of the Amgen Tour of California, as Lawson Craddock just has a little wobble there across, was it some sort of a drain grate or something, but his progress continues unabated, and the sticky ticker is sitting at a minute and a half of a gap between himself and the 2 riders up front, which are Evan Huffman and Robin Carpenter. Sorry, Evan Huffman and Ian Garrison, that is. Evan Huffman from the rally cycling team, and the Hagens-Berman Axion young rider, Ian Garrison. And Robin Carpenter, of course, is the interloper in between. Yeah, and it'd be quite interesting to see if this road straightens out at some point in the stage. I think Craddock will be able to see Carpenter up the road, and there he is. I just wonder how much has Carpenter got left in his legs. Could he potentially go with Craddock and get back into that front group and provide some further help to Huffman and Garrison to just do a few more turns and take a little bit more workload out of certainly Hoffman's sort of agenda. Lawson Craddock just getting a little bit of information there from the motorcycle comm about his deficit to these 2 men who are into another one of these grippy little ascents. They come thick and fast, don't they? We've already been across the second King of the Mountains of the day, East Carmel Valley Road, led over the top by the 2 riders in your shot. Behind them, Robin Carpenter, and Lawson Craddock just vaulting out of the peloton in his eagerness to get involved in this one. The next one is a Cat 3 ascent with just over 28 kilometers remaining. Sorry, Cat 2 ascent, so one of the tougher ones. And now we see Lawson Craddock mopping up Robin Carpenter, who is a fine rider in his own right, 25-year-old for rally cycling. And rally cycling really are a case study on how to surprise the World Tour squads and get a couple of wins in the Amgen Tour of California. They managed it last year, putting multiple riders into the breakaway group. That's the way to do it, if you possibly can, if it's allowed. Well, we've got riders racing clear and trying to go for glory. Let's see how they get on. Lawson Craddock is pushing on in his efforts to get up front with the leading two riders. It's US riders 1, 2 and 3 as they race down into the final on stage 3 on the Amgen Tour of California. Lawson Craddock, twice a top 5 finisher in this event, string of top 10 finishes, once on the podium a couple of years ago as well, back in 2014 indeed, when Bradley Wiggins took the overall success, and he is hounding down these two men as Ian Garrison for Hagens Berman Axion, 20-year-old rider, is really performing admirably today. Axel Merckx has picked out another good one. He really does have a hell of an academy of riders that he's propelling through to the big show. And those two riders, Garrison in company, of course, with Evan Huffman, twice a stage winner 12 months ago, are being harried by the peloton, who've closed the gap a little bit. It was out towards 3 minutes. It's come down to 2 minutes in recent times, not least from the as a result of the impetus of Daniel Oss of the Bora Hansgrohe squad. What a great acquisition for that team that the Italian rider with the flowing tresses has been, and he's doing some great legwork on the front of the peloton to try and keep this gap to a narrow and manageable 2 minutes with 42.5 kilometers remaining. Meanwhile, Craddock has the gap down to a minute, and he has replaced in third place on the road Robin Carpenter of Rally Cycling, who was mopped up without so much as a buy or leave. Another little speed wobble there from Evan Huffman.
No,
was catching him out.
I think he something happened to his drivetrain there, so whether he lost a chain or whatever it was, but as soon when he was putting the power on there, it basically made the bike skip, and it wasn't so much the fact that he was just hitting something or losing grip. It was a technical problem.
He's probably forgotten about it already. Put it behind him immediately. Who knows? Maybe he's got a massive surge of adrenaline. Who knows? But it
wasn't. I don't think it was a big enough moment to get that big an adrenaline kick out of.
Yeah, just a slightly look more frightening from our perspective. But no harm, no foul. He's just going back to the team car. So maybe there was such an issue. Yeah,
the bike is done. Chain is wrapped up around the rear mech, so
there you go. Good call, and needs quick assistance. That's going to aid Lawson Craddock's effort to get back on terms with these two riders, or to get up with them. Huffman wants to make an adjustment to that ride, to that bike, which is painted in a rather fetching shade of pink as a result of an association with some young supporters. And he wants to get back on his race bike, and you can understand that.
Well, yeah, unless you got another bike on the car which is set up exactly like perfect for you, then you definitely want to get back onto your own bike. And there wasn't enough bikes on the roof of that car to for I think Huffman to have a specific bike set up for him. But he's clearly not happy about the oil on his hands either, is he?
Well, that's a mess, isn't it? I mean, really, that's a major problem. He's got to get the wipes out of the car between now and the end of the stage. If he's going to be lifting those hands in glory, we don't want to see loads of oil marks on them. So these considerations have to be taken into account. Meanwhile, it's good news for this man, isn't it? Craddock and his efforts to get on terms now. We have a lone leader up front with Garrison, and will he wait for Huffman? I presume that he'll certainly be minded to think about it.
Well, whether he waits or whether Huffman gets back, or whether Craddock catches Huffman and then they go up the road together, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But it's certainly not ideal to have 3 riders doing solo rides. But it's a 45-second gap there between Huffman and Craddock. I don't think Huffman can sort of sit up and wait for that one. And at the same time, Garrison, I don't think he can wait either. I think Huffman was stood on the side of the road for too long.
So they're going to have to ride 45 seconds, and Garrison was not going to hang around for him. So it's up to Huffman. Wonder, will he wait for Craddock? Yeah, that's what we've got to see.
I don't think so.
Keep riding it. Go racing. See
Yeah.
see how the road will decide. On that pink bike, by the way, and thanks to Tour Tracker, Amgen Tour of California Tour Track for this bit of information, but it's as a result of an initiative from the United Healthcare Children's Foundation. A couple of children have contributed their notion of how to produce a particularly winning livery on those bikes. Robin Carpenter has one hip-hop design designed by a 10-year-old Tatiana, and Anna loves pink, so she's designed Evan Huffman's bike with rainbows, bunnies, princesses, etc. That's the one he wants to get back on. So he's going to carry that bike all the way through to the line and potentially to a stage success.
Oh, it's a nice initiative, though. I think that's pretty cool, rather than having all these bikes done up in, I don't know what kind of special colours that someone has come up with, but that's cool.
Yeah, it is a cool one. Yeah, and you got to have bunnies, don't you? I think every bike should have bunnies on it.
And unicorns.
Well, exactly. Yes, indeed. Yes. Yeah. They exist. That's a good question. So here's the situation. Just over 24 miles remaining, and it's now 46 seconds. So between Lawson Craddock and Ian Garrison, and Garrison is being hunted down by Evan Huffman, who has eaten into that advantage that Garrison had opened up. So one wonders just how hard that Garrison is pushing on. I suppose the next question is perhaps Evan Huffman is just that much stronger, given his performances over the last couple of years in US stage racing, and most particularly in the Amgen Tour of California. It wouldn't be beyond the bounds of possibility. 26 seconds. Sorry, 20 seconds for Huffman. Let's get a look at this again with that chain wrapped up, and that is an awkward moment. How did that happen?
Just basically bounced off, you know, awkward change. It's just one of those things that happens once in a while, and you know, if you're unlucky, the chain then wraps itself up around and it kind of goes in between the chainring and the frame and gets stuck there. You can't get it out, and it requires a bit of force to basically get it clear again, and it's a pain when it happens.
Yeah, a lot of talk about clutches on rear derailleurs these days. It seems to be the new exciting new adoption from the mountain bike world, isn't it?
Well, whether it's exciting or not, I don't know, but it certainly prevents a lot of what we call chain slap. You know, the roads are getting worse and worse out there. You know, I think across the world pretty much. There are not many places that I've ridden a bike recently that are actually quite good in terms of road surface. UK desperately poor, and with that I think the clutch rear mech with the stronger spring holds the chain on better.
Makes sense as far as a lot of people are concerned. Certainly if you're doing a little bit of off-road riding with your road riding, and there's a lot of sort of bikes that are made to handle both terrains at once, or at least on the one bike ride,
or
as you well know.
Or if you're smart enough to go one by on the front.
Oh, that is extraordinary. And then you need something to make sure your front either chain stays on, because the front mech is not there to do it for you.
Yeah, so just get that clutch rear mech.
Complicated stuff. Up front, Ian Garrison, but can he solo home to glory? We're going to find out. Peloton hounding down the riders up front, of whom there are numerous at the moment. We've got Ian Garrison clear of Evan Huffman, who's untangled his chain. And he, in turn, has a decent advantage over Lawson Craddock. Well, it's sitting at about 15, hovering at 15 seconds, as indeed it has been for quite a while. But if anything, Ian Garrison, this young man, is opening up an advantage over Evan Huffman and the rest. Meanwhile, the peloton, well, they were at one stage this afternoon 5.5 minutes in arrears from the early breakaway group of 3 riders, which included Ian Garrison. And now it's down to just 1 minute and 20 seconds. None of the first 2 riders are a threat in any sense on overall general classification, but for Ian Garrison, he'll try and stay clear for as long as possible and hope that when the peloton arrives that it will be considerably trimmed down. I'm assuming he's going to get chased down. He's not going to think in those terms, but you would never know. The motorcycle's been pulled out of the gap here, and the peloton have chased down Craddock, so no luck for Lawson Craddock on this occasion. He'll have to go back to the drawing board. Time to take a drink for Lawson Craddock as he's absorbed and reabsorbed indeed by the peloton, led by Daniel Oss of the Bora Hansgrohe squad, who's not allowing anyone off a long leash today, because Ian Garrison now sitting with an advantage of 1 minute and 20 seconds on the peloton. He's a lone chaser behind him. Evan Huffman, his erstwhile breakaway companion, now sits 35 seconds removed from this 20-year-old rider. Well, in his second year as a pro rider, and of course the Axel Merckx inspired and run squad has now stepped up to pro continental level. This young man was third in the World Junior Time Trial Championships a few years ago, so he's not afraid to go racing solo. He was presented with this opportunity as a result of Huffman's chain drop situation, but now finds himself with the considerable challenge of the next climb of the day, the third of 5 categorized ascents along the way. 3 kilometers of tough and arduous climbing for this young man, who from Decatur in Georgia, who's pressing on for glory. The question is, can he hang on clear of the peloton, and more particularly, can he hang on clear of the peloton before the top of this climb is reached?
Yeah, I think that's going to be more the question at this point, because the peloton are certainly not hanging about, and I think it looks like both Garrison and Huffman are losing time very, very quickly, and with Craddock having been brought back in now as well. It all depends really whether the bunch wants to go racing and really make it a hard stage, or whether the bunch are just happy leaving 2 riders out there, because it's quite a nice and an easy number to sort of control, and you can almost put 1 rider on the front for a large part of the day to control these 2 riders, and then maybe add 1 more to start bringing them back again. So yeah, I guess it's up to the teams in the bunch how they fancy playing this one. But I think personally we're going to see a bit of a battle going on at the back end of today's stage. Talking about this climb coming up here now, that's 3 kilometers at 7.6% average, and then we've got another one coming up at 5.4 kilometers long with 5.7% average, so that's another significant one. And then as we're coming into to Laguna Seca, we've got the Laguna Seca summit, which is 1.1 kilometers but at 10.3% average, so that is a properly steep climb. Anytime you get an average percentage of over 10%, that means it is very, very steep indeed.
Double figures, double trouble for a lot of the sprinters in there, and there are a lot of riders that'll want to eliminate those sprinters.
Yeah, and you know, there's an opportunity here for the likes of Sagan and maybe even an Oliver Ness, and you know, guys that are faster. We were talking about the classic men earlier, the Tour of Flanders kind of riders. They're all used to doing those kind of percentages all day long in the classics. So they're going to want to mix it up to try and get a stage win out of this one. But I also think that there's going to be 1 or 2 guys who are riding around in here now thinking there's a time trial tomorrow, but got to save my legs a bit, and all of a sudden you get found out because you're trying to save your legs, and you get gapped, and that's that. You've lost out.
Well, here's another man who may well have lost out as a result of that little chain drop. Evan Huffman, in his hopes and dreams of winning a 3rd stage of the Amgen Tour of California in 2 consecutive years, well, now finds himself being drawn back into the clutches of the peloton. We mentioned those climbs to come, and the final climb, the summit reached with 2.5 kilometers to go. Well, Evan Huffman right now can't see beyond the climb to the summit of Cachagua Road. Summit indeed, as finds himself in pursuit. We haven't mentioned the overall race leader. Egan Bernal, of course, leads pretty much every classification he conceivably can. He's the overall race leader. He leads the King of the Mountains classification as well, although that jersey is currently on the shoulders of Rafa Majka, who sits 2nd overall in the race, and handily placed, very much on terms, 25 seconds in arrears. But what a peerless performance it was by Egan Bernal yesterday. I think we're going to be talking about this young man for quite some considerable time to come.
Yeah, definitely. he rode a smart race and very controlled and confident sort of approach to the summit. I think he waited for long enough, but gave himself a bit of road to go out there and actually race on, to try and build up a bit of an advantage as well. So yeah, I think it was a very good ride by Bernal, but I think also the rider of the day for me yesterday, it was Guggenhardt.
Yeah, superb ride. Just drove that pace up the climb on behalf of Egan Bernal, his teammate. And indeed, Tega Egenhart did very well on this equivalent stage a couple of years ago when they raced down into Laguna Seca, finishing 5th on that occasion. So he'll have fond memories of the race down towards the car race track near Monterey. That's where we're heading, but we got to get over this climb first. Lone leader out front, Ian Garrison, still showing it a minute advantage. I'm not so sure that hasn't come down considerably. Evan Huffman is about to be absorbed, indeed reabsorbed by the peloton, but Garrison is making a bit of a name for himself here, isn't he? It's superb performance from the young riders. I say 3rd and bronze medal in the World Junior Time Trial Championships a couple of years ago, and stage win in the Tour de Beauce in Canada as well in 2017 in a small group that included Robin Carpenter, who was in the break with him a little bit earlier on today. Carpenter doing a solid job for Evan Huffman to try and propel him into a decent situation. It hasn't really worked out as he might have hoped, but Huffman is continuing to press on, and this man Fernando Gaviria, well, I was saying safely in the peloton. Is he safe at the moment? I think he's probably just popping back to the car, wasn't he?
Well, he certainly looks like he's talking a lot on the radio there about what's happening.
A little just pulled a foot out for whatever reason. Gets a very welcome and nicely timed push by Ilio Kaisa.
Well, it just looks like his gears are packed in as well there for a second. He certainly couldn't get down to a small enough gear to get up that gradient. So whether it's another bit of a mechanical problem there, it certainly looked like it for Gaviria. And I was just thinking, Gaviria is actually good enough on a lot of these type of climbs to potentially just about make it in with the front group for a finish. And I think obviously in that case we're in for a pretty special showdown.
Yeah, it should be interesting. Indeed, Gaviria is not probably quite as good as climber as Peter Sagan, but he's better than a lot of sprinters.
No, definitely. I think, like you said, Sagan is better, certainly when he's on form. But looking at how Gaviria is pedaling around at the moment, he looks in good shape. So I think he. Well, it should be on the limit for him to make it across some of these. Certainly the final climb is so steep, and that's usually where the sprinters are struggling a bit.
They're all starting to shake it up a little bit coming out of the peloton as Huffman continues to press on in his efforts to at least stay clear of the peloton across the top of this climb. And the Team EF Education First Drapac squad clearly mean business. They've got Martinez sitting at a handy 6th place overall at 40 seconds. How are they going to play this one today? Clearly they've come to race. Likes of Logan Owen in there, and not having perhaps the day that they might have liked yesterday, but Lawson Craddock was not going to give up on this one too easily. Meanwhile, exit stage left, Mark Cavendish finds himself distanced from the peloton, but he's going to fight for as long as possible to at least see what the legs are like and see whether he can get on terms and contest this one. Logan Owen just winching himself towards Evan Huffman. Tom Screench, of course, who's made himself famous in this event in the last few years, hasn't he? With some great race-leading performances, stage-winning performances. Also had a spectacular crash and some slightly horrifying pictures as he teetered around the road with concussion as well in this event in the past. But Tom Screench, based in Europe these days, and he is looking forward to trying to really put it in amongst the other squads, and it's starting to split up and go in the wrong direction for some riders like Zabel and the rest. And Cavendish and some of the decent sprint talents aren't enjoying this one.
Well, it's what we kind of call the start of the gruppetto being organised there. The big name sprinters are kind of finding it very difficult to cope with that one, and usually there's one or two of the guys shouting Gruppetto, and all of a sudden you see anyone of the lead out guys who are finding this too much basically sit up and let a little bit of a gap go, find their own rhythm that everyone is comfortable with in that group, and then start plugging away to try and get to the finish. 2
climbs to go, of course. It's if this was the final climb of the day, then they might sort of redouble their efforts to try and stay in there for just a little bit longer, so they were a little bit closer to going over the top. But 2 climbs to go afterwards.
Yeah, and 2 significant ones as well. They're not going to make it across those ones, so it's all about saving legs for the next opportunity that they will come across, and maybe even a bit of a test tomorrow in the time trial. The time trial is always a good opportunity to see how you go and to get that big effort done.
Well, we're not too far from the summit of this climb, and what about that? Tom Squinch leads the trio back to our race leader. So now we have 4 up front. Garrison has been joined, and Garrison looks like he's capable of going with this one. Also, that little bit of added impetus from the 2 riders coming out of the peloton was good news for Evan Huffman, because he's been able to jump into this one as well and make it a quartet up front. So Huffman is back at the front. Garrison now has 3 riders for company. Tom Squinch out of the saddle in the red of Trek Segafredo, and the pink and white colours of the Team EF Education First, worn by Logan Owen.
I think Huffman is quite keen on picking up some points here on this King of the Mountains as well.
Well, of course, he did lead over the first 2 ascents of the day. The King City Road, 3 points on offer for that Cat 3 ascent for Evan Huffman, and he took 5 points at the Cat 2 ascent at East Carmel Valley Road. And now this 3rd climb of the day, offering 5 points, so he'd step into a share of the lead with our overall race leader.
Garrison is gone.
And Garrison's popped, and that is, well, it's been a brave effort from him, and I think he'll continue to press over the top. He's that close to it to see can he get back to the group, but Tom Squinch takes those points. He wants to get involved in this one. Huffman has to make do with 2nd, so that has torn it a little bit for Evan Huffman. He's going to try and persevere through to the penultimate climb of the day. Meanwhile, a little bit of a headache and a little bit of a leg ache indeed for Ian Garrison. He tries to get back on term. The peloton just dangling back there at a remove of 30 seconds. It will be interesting to see whether they'll be of a mind to let these 4 riders duke it out and stay out front for a little while. Inside the final 30 kilometers, heading towards Monterey. Here comes Ian Garrison, who is distanced slightly, having raced solo up most of this 3rd of 5 climbs of the day. Inside 30 kilometers remaining on this 3rd stage of the Amgen Tour of California. Garrison now has got into the tuck to make it back onto the tail of Evan Huffman, who, having made it back up to Garrison and in the company of 2 raiders out of the peloton, just got a little bit wrong at one of the hairpins towards the top of this climb on this the early moments of this descent, and now finds himself with a little bit of work to do to get back on terms with Tom Squinch and Logan Owen. So work to do for the 2 American riders to get back up to the Latvian and the US riders. Meanwhile, the peloton 35 seconds behind, 112 strong, they reckon. So almost all the riders. I suspect that's quite considerably reduced, actually. So we won't take that one. We'll take that one with a pinch of salt. But the peloton not too far away, just over half a minute. Just over 25 kilometers remaining on stage 3 of the Amgen Tour of California. There's a little bit of frantic activity as riders try to get back in and back involved. This is Mirza Al Hamadi from the UAE Team Emirates squad. Found himself distanced on the 3rd of 5 climbs of the day. 2 climbs remaining, and 2 tough assaults indeed for the riders. It's an up and down day, one of those sawtooth profiles that is good news for the climbers and good news for some of the sprinters and the hard classics men as well, who are capable of getting over those climbs with greater facility than others. We've seen several very strong sprinters distanced. Meanwhile, up front, We had a group of 4 across the top of the climb, but Evan Huffman, well, it was 3, followed at some small remove by Ian Garrison. And now we're looking at Evan Huffman, who was in that group of 3 across the top of the climb, but made a couple of mistakes, and he hasn't really found it too easy to get back on terms. So he's struggling to get back up to the riders ahead.
Well, there's 3 riders up ahead, and he's descending very poorly indeed at the moment. Not getting the apex right in going around these bends, and not really being aggressive enough either. He just doesn't look like he's at one with that bike in any way, shape or form. As a professional bike rider, there should only be 1 or 2 people in the world who'd be able to ride away from
wrong
him.
again. I mean,
Yeah.
very difficult, and it just looks like there's absolutely no confidence in himself in that machine at the moment. And Evan Huffman finds himself, well, considerably distanced now. Ian Garrison managed to get back up to Huffman and raced and charged ahead, and he's up front, we do believe. The last we saw, indeed, he was about to make the junction with the 2 up front, Tom Squinch, who's racing. Oh, here we go. He hasn't quite got there, but he's very, very close, isn't he? And he's pushing on for glory.
Well, he's taking the risk necessary through the corners as well, and pressing on to try and get back onto the wheels of these guys. And you know, he's doing the right thing. But you can see, like, when you're in that position, when you're, I mean, Hoffman was with them at the top, but can't stay with them going downhill. So either something is wrong with his bike that is causing him to not feel that it handles right, or he's just completely lost his bottle.
Well, he was extremely keen to get back on that bike when he had the issue with the chain a little earlier on. He certainly stayed with it now. Meanwhile, we pick up the main peloton, just 40 seconds back. Plenty of riders not really enjoying that particular left-hander. That's Bjerg, the young rider with Hagens, Axion Bergman, who's... let's get it right. Hagens, Berman, Axion. They've changed around the three names this year. It's the same 3 names that they've run in the team name of that squad over the last few years. They've gone up to Pro Continental level this year and just swapped it all around and made it as difficult as possible for us. But suffice it to say, they're doing a super job in this race, courtesy of Ian Garrison, back up with the leaders. And it's a solid job on the front from Logan Owen, toiling in the sunshine. Carrying along in his wake, Tom Squinch from the Trek Segafredo squad in the red jersey, and Ian Garrison still up front, still persevering, making a name for himself. Squinch not going to hang around here, wants to press on, knows that what they have, they'll do well to hold. They really need to try and extend it, the Latvian rider. He's 26 years of age now. Couple of stage wins in this event in the past, 2016 and 2015. And of course, he had a period in the yellow jersey at that time. Won the Tour de Beauce overall, and really developed his career on the North American continent before being picked up by the World Tour in recent seasons, and racing with Trek Segafredo now. Moved across this year from the Cannondale Drapac Pro Cycling team. Peloton in one long crocodile, and about another 10-15 seconds have been added on to the advantage of the trio up front. So that's good news for them. We'll get down to the final, 21.5 kilometers, still very much within the compass of the peloton to close this one down, with 2 climbs to come.
Yeah, we still have one second category climb, which 5.5 kilometers long at almost 6% average. So that's going to be hard enough for these guys to stay out there on. And then we got that final categorized climb at the Laguna Seca summit, which 1.1 kilometers at 10.3%. That's going to be a bruise for the guys to deal with. And I think that by the looks of this, Bora Hansgrohe are definitely keen on making sure that they got their boys ready for action, whether it's Rafa Majka trying to strike out there for a few bonus seconds, or actually trying to drop a couple of the GC guys, or whether it's Peter Sagan going for another stage win.
Peloton inside a minute removed from those riders up front, the 3 riders up front, with Evan Huffman an increasingly forlorn sight in his efforts to get back on terms. He's 25 seconds, lost another few seconds in recent moments, so it's not going, the signals aren't good for Evan Huffman in his effort to get back up front. Somewhat frustrating, hasn't quite worked out as he would have liked. Meanwhile, The bunch includes Fernando Gaviria. We pick out the green jersey, leader of the sprints classification. Well, points classification is actually being led by, technically by our overall race leader, Egan Bernal, who matched Gaviria's total and sits at the head of general classification, but Gaviria has that one by right. I think he's got a great chance of adding some points to his total. Let's remind you of the overall general classification standings. Egan Bernal, already a three-time winner this season, took his 4th victory in some fine style yesterday. Racing clear on the summit at Gibraltar Road, and now sits with a 25-second advantage at the head of general classification. Rafa Majka of Bora Hansgrohe squad sitting in 2nd position, and it's his team doing a lot of the legwork on the front of the peloton. Adam Yates, great comeback after his injury layoff for the Mitchelton Scott squad. The British rider just over 30 seconds back. Antoine Tolhoek, brave resistance from the young Dutchman from Team Lotto NL Jumbo, and he finds himself now 4th at 40 seconds at the head of another 2 riders, Christian Durasek and Daniel Martinez. Pick out some of the other riders that are pushing for glory. That peloton slimmed down a little bit. They're claiming 113 riders are in there. I'm not so sure that's the case, because they're charging along and really putting it up to them. Holding on to this advantage of just under a minute is a group of 3 riders up front. Logan Owen of the Team EF Education First squad with Tom Squinch, the Latvian rider with Trek Segafredo in his wake. And what a superb ride by Ian Garrison, the young rider from the Hagens Berman Axion squad, who has raced back onto the tail of these 2 riders. He's going to try and surf the wheels for as long as he possibly can. He's been out front all afternoon, just 20 years of age, and up against no less than 11 World Tour teams. He is a young rider of some note and ability. He's made a great name for himself already this afternoon, as Bora Hansgrohe continue to set the agenda on the front of the peloton on behalf of Peter Sagan and Rafa Majka. Well, just over 17 kilometers remaining now on the 3rd stage of the Amjan Tour of California for 2018, as in the center of the bunch towards the front, Egan Bernal watches with interest to see what the Bora Hansgrohe squad can do about closing down the gap to our trio up front. Young Ian Garrison, tallest rider here, and the youngest rider too, at just 20 years of age. And showing the sweat caked on his jersey. Really has been a hot day in the sunshine, heading into wine country in Monterey. There's the profile. It's still got 2 climbs remaining. We've got to go up the Laurels Grade summit to Cat 2 ascent, followed by that Cat 3 climb that comes with just over 2 kilometers from the finish at Laguna Seca, as we plunge down into the racetrack, down the corkscrew, make a left-hander and go for the line. Who's going to get the win? 2 years ago, it was Peter Sagan. And Peter Sagan is in that group. The Bora Hansgrohe squad know they've got a double whammy. They've got 2 reasons to ride here. Rafa Majka is sitting a handy 2nd overall, and they're trying to control the situation. I'm not so sure they're putting Egan Bernal under any difficulty, but the Bora Hansgrohe squad have certainly not been found wanting in their efforts to make sure that Peter Sagan has a great chance. And indeed, Daniel Oss has just gone back to the back of the bunch now. He'll try and save a little bit of energy. Maybe he can make another contribution. It's certainly been a very impressive shift for the Italian riders so far. They're going to leave it up to the Quick Step squad. So Fernando Gaviria has put his team on the front. Still plenty of riders involved here. And just who is going to have the strength to make it over those climbs? And will it whittle down the group? And what's it going to do to general classification? Will it have an effect?
Well, the general classification, I think, it would take someone to actually go out and actively try and break this up and really race it hard. At the moment, it doesn't seem to be that way. It's more kind of everyone's riding around trying to protect their GC riders. But I think there are some guys in here who... quite a selection of riders really who are fast men, climb well, and would really like to have a go at it. And I guess a couple of standout names. Obviously, we got Peter Sagan, I think, who's got to be well, he's going to have to wear the favourite jersey for this one. Nathan Haas definitely going well enough to go up these climbs and be there for the finish, and he's fast as well. Cavendish is back into the group, so
impressive stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean he's obviously fought, and the bunch hasn't pressed on massively going down the hill, and he is a good descender, so he would have quite easily made his way through the cars and sort of dropped down like a bit of a depth charger and got himself back on again. It's what the sprinters do in the Grand Tours as well. You try and survive and try and get yourself back in again if you can. But going back to that, Nathan Haas, I think, is going to be one of the guys that we're going to have to keep a bit of an eye on. Oliver Nelson, I think, for AG2 Mondial, he's going to have to be in there as well as a bit of an outsider.
He has a good finish, doesn't he? Yeah.
He has a good finish. He does well in the classics. I'm sure that he's going to be able to get himself over these next couple of climbs. Niklas Arndt as well for Tim Sunweb. I think definitely he should be there. I doubt that Wildshire is going to make it over the top of this one, but then again, you never know. Then we got a big question mark for me is going to be Alexander Kristoff. Now, Kristoff in the past has made his way over some serious climbs, and I mean, he's won the Tour of Flanders, and he's always there or thereabouts. So with that, you know, is he going well enough to get himself over them climbs, or isn't he? And I think that's we're gonna have to wait and see. Gaviria, potentially, yes.
Dan McClay too, we see gravitating and hovering on the back of the bunch. I wonder what legs he's got for the two remaining climbs. It's going to shake up this group considerably. But the Team EF Education First Strapback British sprinter will be looking to come up with a decent result. Didn't quite work out from on day one. 19th across the line on that occasion. He'll hope for more today. Well, the peloton just a mere 10 seconds behind, but Tom Squinch refuses to capitulate. And Ian Garrison, well, what fight that he's showing, because Logan Owen was minded to actually let Tom Squinch be the last man standing, but Garrison is not about to give this one up without a fight. And I think Garrison's certainly going to be a contender for the most combative rider classification. Now we're starting to see a little bit of a shake-up.
Yeah, definitely is having quite a few riders starting to have a bit of a go here. Looks like here's Lachlan Morton.
An interesting play from Team Dimension Data. Lachlan Morton, their best placed rider, just under 3 minutes behind on general classification. Fair old shake-up, as you might expect from GC yesterday as a result of the climb up Gibraltar Road. And I think Morton just fancied the idea that he might jump over to a rider of Tom Squinch caliber. Always comes up with, you know, he's one of those riders who knows this event well. He's performed well in it, and Tom Squinch would see it as a big opportunity and a big appointment for him.
And he could potentially be one of a sort of a secondary thought in this attack as well, in that Nathan Haas does climb very well. And he can get himself over these couple of climbs with the best riders in the world. So even if the GC guys are really putting the hammer down to go chase after Lachlan Morton, who on paper should be dangerous for the GC, obviously had a bit of an off day yesterday and lost almost 3 minutes. You know, there's some riders up here now in this little group that should cause a reaction in the peloton. And with that, you know, it puts the pressure on everyone else.
Squinch is going to be visited very, very shortly by a little counter-attacking group. Nicely timed.
But Morton is losing the wheel. He's losing the wheel with these two riders.
Yeah, it's the irrepressible Hagens Berman Axion squad. Always want to try and put someone into this, and good effort from Lachlan Morton, but not quite equal to this challenge, and maybe he just thinks, I'm going to throttle back here. Will Mark Cavendish be able to survive the couple of climbs to come? Will Mark Renshaw be minded to push for that as well? Will he have the legs to do it? Squinch is joined by two riders and others trying to clip across the gap as the peloton pick up the pace, but are they picking it up? It's the Team Sky lineup that have taken responsibility here.
Yeah,
for the overall race leader.
It's kind of down to them at this point in the race now to hold this together and keep it as they want it to be. But then, yeah, I think the race is definitely starting to take shape here now. Tom Jeltersleiter there, number 45 for Dimension Data as well, looking pretty good and comfortable in that company.
Yeah, just sitting behind Rafa Majka, who sits second overall and is wearing the Mountains classification jersey, white jersey with polka dots and unfamiliar colours for him. But he's got Pavel Polyansky, his Bora Hansgrohe teammate, just in front of him, and they're lined up behind the Team Sky, almost the entire team. We're taking this one up, taking on the challenge of closing this one down. It's a bit of a short, sharp shock, actually, just over a kilometre in length, 10.3%. So let me get that right. It's a bit longer. Yep, this is the penultimate climb. Let's get it right. It is at 5.4 kilometers at 5.7%, so longer but steadier.
Yeah.
And that suits some riders, suits others a little less so.
Most climbers are just happy if it goes uphill, though, to be fair.
They're just waiting, chomping at the bit all afternoon for things to get painful. Yeah, it's an odd approach to life, but there you go. Yeah, that's pro bike riders for you.
Yeah.
And fantastic entertainment for all that beautiful countryside, isn't it? It's really rich green pastures, and no surprise that it's great country for growing vines, and the grapes from this part of the world are positively world famous. So Squinch is full of fight, isn't he? He's able to cover this one with some facility. Clearly has in mind, I think, to take those Mountains points. He led across the most recent climb. Took a handy 5 points there, so he's putting himself into contention for the Mountains classification. It's like Sean Bennett, I think, might have just chanced his luck to, and well, you make your own luck, don't you, on a climb like this. Meanwhile, Ait Al Abdia of the UAE Team Emirates squad just trying to make it back up. Of course, he has Christian Jurasek handily placed. Well, there you have it. There's confirmation. Sean Bennett of the Hagens Axion, the Berman Axion squad. Well, as soon as Ian Carrison came back into the fold, it was just the signal for another one of Axel Merckx's young charges to.
Bennett had a great ride yesterday as well. He's 19th on GC at 2 minutes and 53 down, so he's really had a good stage yesterday.
Alex Howes there for the team EF Education First, who've clearly got a rocket and been told that there's absolutely nothing goes up the road if it doesn't have a pink jersey involved in it, some way, somehow. Absolutely every piece of action we've seen in the last 15-20 kilometers or even more has involved EF Education First. They're up for this one, as you would expect from a US registered team.
Yeah, definitely, but I think there's going to be more action to this than what we're currently seeing, although Howes is clearly doing a great ride. I have a feeling that the real action is going to come on the next climb, or relatively close to the top of this one, because from the summit of this particular climb, we descend straight into the next categorized climb, and that's where I think we're going to see the fireworks. It's such an opportunity for riders like I'm thinking Adam Yates going for a big move on that steep climb. He's that type of a climber who is happy to stand up for miles and miles and miles on his bike and just dance on the pedals, and I think that's going to be really the way to climb that particular climb.
Adam Yates has a couple of Mitchelton Scott teammates loitering towards the back of the bunch. Loitering is definitely not the word. Suffering in the wheels, because pretty much everyone is suffering in this heat. It's not too hot, but it is so at 24 degrees Celsius. It'll be hot for some people, but for riders from around this part of the world, it's positively balmy and entirely acceptable. Temperate climate almost, isn't it? Well, that was a good effort, but not on this occasion for Alex Howes, as he's been mopped up by the Sky-led peloton. Sean Bennett on the front here, Tom Squinch in his wake, still with designs and plans for that haul of points to come. 5 points at the top of this hill.
Yeah, certainly ambitious, as we got Antler Man there starting his run. It's a big flag he's carrying all the time. That.
I tell you what, yeah, it's a lot of that's a lot of material, isn't it? Lime green, this year's skin suit colour for Antlerman. Very impressive stuff. Pick him out from space with that outfit, wouldn't you? Well, Egan Bernal safely in the wheels. Teg Egenhart, his faithful lieutenant, just sitting in front of his team leader. And what a superb job that he's doing. Egan Bernal looks jaw set, focused only on the top of this hill and the battles to come. We're inside the final 10 kilometers on this third stage. Luke Rowe setting an almost intolerable tempo on the front of the peloton, but communicating with his teammates and making sure that everybody's satisfied with the tempo. I tell you what, there's a few down the back would like to say something about that, not least of them Nathan Haas dangling on the back. And now we get a little bit of excitement as Poljanski has decided to try and ramp this up a bit and perhaps put some of the Sky Riders under a little bit of difficulty. Sivakov, well, it's Luke Rowe followed by Sivakov. Next up is Sebastian Haynau.
Yeah, I think we're too close to the finish for any of the Sky Riders to really worry too much about it, and we're not too far from the summit of this climb either. So I think looking at how those guys from Team Sky are sitting at the moment, they're very, very confident in their ability, and they still have got Teg Egenhart, who yesterday was spectacular on the final climb as far as I'm concerned. Such a strong turn on the front there, and just really looked in control, and did all the right moves and right things to set Bernal up for a final attack there with about 2.5 kilometers to the summit. And you know, with that, I think that they've got to feel confident at this point in time that they're going to be able to protect the yellow jersey.
Yeah, and he's got a time trial to come tomorrow, and he's the Colombian national time trial champion. Now, they tend to like climbs, but he's already tasted success in a time trial at the Tour of Romandy, albeit a fairly steep one. But I think any rider of his caliber who's capable of exploring the depths of pain and suffering to win the Colombian national time trial champion.
Such a beautiful part of cycling, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. Only the most peculiar really have excelled at time trialing over the world. That's perhaps why it's so popular in this part of the world, isn't it? But yeah, Egan Bernal's a superb tester.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. And up to show tomorrow then, probably with the yellow jersey on his back as well. So question is just, is that gonna help him or sort of put a little bit more pressure on his shoulders that he needs to perform to hold on to that jersey? Because you know, it's certainly not a done deal. Micah 25 seconds down, he's not a great tester. TJ van Garderen is a minute down, he's a very good tester. So I think, yeah, there's enough in there to I think for Bernal to feel that he needs to perform as well.
Got to get it out. Oh, well, these men are getting it out, aren't they? Tom Squinch on the front for the Trek Segafredo squad. And he's got Sean Bennett with him, the young rider with the Hagens Berman Axion squad, who's sitting 19th overall at 2 minutes and 53 seconds. He's not really a threat on general classification, but I think it's an indication of how well he's going after yesterday's stage. High cadence from both those riders, not least the one on the front, and 17 seconds really just dangling there, aren't they? But they want to make it sure that they get over this climb. I think that's the major agenda for them at the moment. And Squinch perhaps starting to feel it. He's been out there for a little while. Pick out Peter Sagan safely in there at the moment. Brent Bookwalter as well. Difficult and disappointing day for him yesterday, 17th only overall following yesterday's stage, but Bookwalter 4th in this equivalent stage a couple of years ago, so he'll hope to perhaps make amends.
Yeah, that was a bit surprising yesterday that Bookwalter wasn't up there delivering like we've sort of expected him to. It lost a little bit too much time for me to sort of be completely comfortable with how he performed. There was something, I think there was some other underlying issue.
Well, across the top, Tom Squinch takes the maximum points. It's another decent haul of 5 points for the Trek Segafredo man, second in line here. Sean Bennett second across the top of the climb. Will it be contested amongst the bunch? I think they're more interested really in trying to control things, make sure that they drag those riders back into the fold. We've got pretty much exactly 6 kilometers from the top of this hill to the foot of the final climb of the day, which is 1,100 meters long and steep with it.
Very steep with it, 10.3%. It's going to be a test for everyone who's still in this bike race, and certainly if anyone who's got aspirations of being there for the finish and sprinting for a stage win, it's going to be a big test indeed.
Interesting to see Agidor Le Mondial on the front of the peloton. You mentioned Oliver Nassen as a potential for victory in this event. Clearly they believe something similar.
Yeah, and they still also have to protect Matthias Frank, who's still 7th on the GC. So they need to kind of make sure that he's kept looked after.
So nudging 70 kph down this descent. It's worth hunkering down on the top tube, isn't it, for Tom Squinch? Just in front of him, Sean Bennett, with much to race for.
Definitely the best part of cycling, this bit.
Yeah, well, they've certainly earned it. The cruel bit is that it doesn't
Gaviria's
last anything
got
like
problems.
as well. Oh, this is interesting. Fernando Gaviria, perhaps one of the pre-stage favourites, has picked a less than ideal moment to require a bike change. He has, well, he's got disc brakes on there, so I wonder, was it a puncture and they decided on a bike change being the quickest way to get him back in. But he's going to have a hell of a job to get back in with just over 4 miles remaining.
Yeah, I think that's going to be very difficult right now for Gaviria to make it back in there, and certainly if he's going to have anything left to get over the next climb as well, and then stay with the leaders for the sprint. So I think this was basically Gaviria's potential of fighting it out for a stage win has just gone down the drain.
Well, he's got a couple of riders coming back who didn't much enjoy that most recent climb. That might be of some assistance to Fernando Gaviria. Finds himself isolated, not too many teammates around either. So
that looked like it was Matt Hayman actually coming back into play there, but or maybe even Jack Bauer actually. But anyway, there was one of the Mitchelton Scott riders coming up, but I don't think Gaviria's going to get too much help from one of those guys.
Yeah,
certainly not if Caleb Ewan is still in that front group. So I think this is very much up to Gaviria to try and make his way back on again, but I can't see that happening, because the teams on the front of the bunch are turning the screw up to basically turning the volume up to 11 by now, and with that it's going to take a significant effort, if it's at all possible, to get back into the mix of this group here.
yeah, no assistance from Matt Hayman at the moment. We're not anticipating it. Haven't picked out Caleb Ewan in the bunch. He doesn't exactly fill the screen, but I can tell you he knows how to hide, and he knows how to get over the short climbs better than most. Indeed, his power to weight ratio probably better than most sprinters when it comes to those climbs, isn't it? So he is, we believe, safely in the group, certainly by the body language of Matt Hayman, not assisting Fernando Gaviria at the moment. Some riders making it back safely into a significantly reduced peloton. Still one climb to go. The Team Sky squad back on the front. Agidor Le Mondial back in the box for a little while. Ian Stannard on the front. Sean Bennett on the front for the Hagens Berman Axion squad. Round this long hairpin and heading into Laguna Seca. Coming down to the closing stages around this familiar finish. They've got just this climb to come in the closing stages, the summit of which is reached with 2.3 kilometers left on the stage, and it is a narrow advantage indeed, as Gaviria sees a few riders in front, 1 or 2 cars in front, but are the peloton just too far away?
They're way too far away for him right now. We're looking at a good 40 seconds or so of riding, and I don't think that's going to be possible, certainly as we're going into the next King of the Mountains climb here, and this is going to be a steep one.
Interesting decision from the Quick Step squad. No riders back, so they obviously believe that they can perhaps change their tactic and maybe look towards Hodge or indeed Max Ricchesi, who have they got to sprint for glory here, as we see absolutely emptying himself. Sean Bennett on the front for Hagens Berman Axion. Is that Tall Hook? Tall Hook, the wearing the Young Riders jersey and sitting 4th overall, has decided to try and scatter put the cat among the pigeons a little bit, and he's shaking it up, and doesn't look as if our race leader Egan Bernal is going to respond too quickly. Well, the wheels are falling off for several riders towards the back. That was Sepp Kuss dropping out of the main group. Naesen safely in there. Tallhook on the front now, so it cuts a diminutive figure. Just as I said, Naesen pulls out of the line. Clearly not going to be his day.
No, it's just such a brutal climb to do this. It does favour the climbers. It's just who out of the sprinters are going well enough to get themselves over the top of this one, especially if they start attacking here now as well. Doing big sort of tempo changes on a climb like this is very, very difficult. It's even problematic for some of the best climbers in the world, because they're used to maybe slightly longer sort of alpine climbs, and that's what they specialize in. This is just a raw power effort, and if you got your power to weight right, then you'll get up it okay.
Oh, it's absolutely horrible. What an impressive job being done by Sean Bennett and Tom Squinch, because they're hanging on, they're dangling in front. Tallhook is still pushing, still 500 metres to the top of this climb, so I think there's plenty of opportunity for riders to get back on terms. Bennett is not giving this one up without a fight. He's coming off a great top 10 performance in the Tour of the Gila, and he's had a couple of great top 10s as well in Nations Cup under 23 races in Europe. Gent-Wevelgem, Tour of Flanders among them. And he is definitely giving them a great shot at victory today.
And Tallhook is going really well on the front here now. He's typical kind of climber for these steeper, very, very slight build rider, and it's clearly putting a lot of riders under pressure here.
Still pressing on, and Tom Squinch hasn't reacted, but he's safely in the wheels at the moment. Dillier's there as well. He's coming off a great classic season and still absolutely flying. Meanwhile, well, he's still there, isn't he? Peter Sagan, he's won this stage before, hanging on grimly on the tail of Floris Detir, but well, it's a superb job being done by Peter Sagan. This is hurting everyone right now.
It definitely is, but right there, 2 wheels behind, is Caleb Ewan.
Well, he's stalking his prey, knows exactly the wheel he wants, and if Peter Sagan gets over this hill, it looks to me as if Caleb Ewan's going to manage it too. The gradient levels off, but will they get to sprint for glory, because they're going to lead them across the top. Tom Squinch is going to take a very useful haul of points that could well propel him into the lead of the King of the Mountains classification, but he's got something else to go for. He's got the stage honours on the day. He's won stages in this race before. Can they possibly hang on? The road rises once more. There's a little meandering in the main group of favourites behind. They don't want to be the one to close the gap.
I was going to say, watch out now for the favourites coming forward for a big move here now. I think this is going to be, someone's going to go for it and try and attack. It's far enough out from the finish line to go for a move and potentially hold on.
Well, onto the racetrack in Laguna Seca, this wonderful monument to US auto racing, constructed in 1957. It's played host to some of the world's most famous car races, few bike races over the years as well. The Sea Otter Classic is popular in this part of the world, isn't it? And of course, we had a stage here back in 2016, won by the reigning world champion, and still the reigning world champion, Peter Sagan, who is in this group. Has he got anyone to put manners on this group and perhaps close it down?
I think that was just Nathan Haas popping out of the bunch there from Katusha, going for it.
Well, an interesting play from Haas. Doesn't clearly fancy his chances of going toe-to-toe. Look at Bernal sitting safely in the line here as well. A little bit of a stall can only be good news for the duo up front. They're still hanging on. They're hanging on, and they will start to believe. They've got to rise up and head down the corkscrew into the closing stages. Tell you what, this is going to feel like Alpe d'Huez right now.
Yeah, and it's a lot steeper than what it looks on the screen, that's for sure. So it's still a very, very difficult climb for them to get up now, and they're just about hanging on. But by the time they get to the top here now, a little bit of falls flat, and then they're dropping down the corkscrew into the final kilometre. And are they going to be able to hold on?
Oh, well,
It's agonising stuff, and Peter Sagan is starting to think that if I'm going to win this stage, I might have to do it myself, but they're all going to follow him around, and we've seen in the past that he doesn't like to be the man that has to close the gap, so he goes to the front. Egan Bernal fancies his chances. Tom Squinch is going for glory. The 26-year-old Latvian rider is going to lead the field as they plunge down through the famous corkscrew turn. He switches left and then right, and now he has the gradient in his favour, but he knows that he's got to try and get on the pedals, and if there's any power to be got in those pedals, well, he needs to take it. A momentary relief for Tom Squinch. It's a narrow advantage. He's put Sean Bennett behind him. Bennett, of course, who raced up to him and assisted Squinch to stay clear of the peloton for such a long period of time. Now Tom Squinch has timed his effort to absolute perfection. Still some work to do.
Yeah, definitely a bit of work to do still, and quite a lot of wind about here as well.
Well,
Look
at
the
the
helicopter.
Sand is blowing across, and he's well, getting lots of frantic flag waving, trying to show him the way to turn 11 and the final left-hander that will take him into the home straight. He might just do this, you know. Tom Squinch into the final turn, and he's going to sprint for glory. Can he possibly? He's got to go all the way to the line, and he's done it. Tom Squinch has made it a third Amgen Tour of California stage success. He can barely believe it, and he's got to ride this one all the way to the line. I tell you what, but that's a celebration. Is he celebrating too early across the grid markings and across the finish line to take victory for Trek Segafredo? Tom Squinch of Latvia has got the win from Sean Bennett. Caleb Ewan is going to lead the bunch in behind, but it's for a disconsolate third place finish. And what a wonderful stage we've had. One for the breakaway riders. It'd been tipped that that might be the case. It looked for all the world as if they would be denied in the closing stages, but that was epic stuff. Through those final few climbs, they can barely believe it. What a beautiful win indeed for Tom Squinch and for Trek Segafredo. Well, the celebrations will continue long into the night, because that was as beautiful as it was in some ways improbable. It seemed for all the world as if they were going to be caught in those final few kilometers, but that came down to pure athletic performance, and the moment's hesitation in the bunch proved just what Tom Squinch needed. Beautifully delivered, and let's hear from him after this short break. Well, this was the moment, and he could barely believe it. It's almost a year to the day since his spectacular crash out of the Amgen Tour of California. Tom Squinch takes the victory, and with one of the most elaborate victory celebrations you're ever likely to see. I tell you what, he was confident. I was a little less so, that he was thought he might have given it up, and that might have brought Sean Bennett back into it, but he knew he had enough daylight between himself and Bennett to enhance his reputation with a great second place finish. But it's the Trek Segafredo man taking a third career success in the Amgen Tour of California on the racetrack at Laguna Seca. Tom Squinch, well, he broke his collarbone, was badly concussed, out for some considerable time after that dramatic and spectacular crash. If you've ever seen it on YouTube, it's a bit of a horror story, not so much because of the injuries he received, but for the potential for damage to himself and other riders as a result of him trying to get back on his bike. But, well, he repaired to Girona, repaired his broken bones, repaired his career, stepped across to Trek Segafredo this year from the Cannondale squad, and it has heralded another success on North American soil for this Latvian rider. Absolutely loves this part of the world. Riders still coming in. This is Fernando Gaviria just hiding at the back of this group. Disappointed, disconsolate, didn't get to duke it out with the other sprint specialists, and the only good news he'll get out of that is that they didn't get to duke it out for the win, did they? Caleb Ewan leading the bunch in, but a few seconds behind.
Yeah, it was well, you never know, he may definitely have changed if he'd been there as well, but there you go.
Well, there's confirmation. Stage 3 results. The victory going to Tom Squinch of Trek Segafredo. A narrow margin ahead of his erstwhile breakaway companion Sean Bennett of Hagens Bermanaxi and Caleb Ewan leading the bunch in ahead of Peter Sagan and Egan Bernal, sprinting well, not adding bonus seconds or even taking them away. Still a fine finish for the overall race leader. Yates has Schlachter, Bookwalter and Barta rounding out the top 10 on a day when it was a whittled down group chasing down those breakaway upstarts that survived to contest the win. Well, I don't anticipate we're going to see too much in the way of a change on general classification, but it has been a day when the entertainment quotient has been an absolute an all-time high, really. Issue in doubt all the way to the flag at the finish line in Laguna Seca. And Tom Squinch will be ushered and escorted through to the podium as riders will make their way in for quite some considerable time after a spectacular day of racing action. Still groups coming through turn 11 and into the finish line with the serious business of the time trial to come tomorrow, and that's going to be one of the key appointments in this event. Will Egan Bernal be able to hang on to his handy advantage, which hasn't extended, to the best of my understanding, Rafa Majka safely in that group. Weren't given to understand that he had been distanced, and certainly the way that Bora Hansgrohe were riding would suggest that their GC contender was still right there. Adam Yates too. What a great day of racing we've had. Looked for all the world at this moment as if Sean Bennett got his hands back in the bars at just the nick of time to lead Tom Squinch for much of this final climb of the day. Tom Squinch, I think, has not just taken stage honours, but could well have slipped into a share of the lead. He's moved on his total in the King of the Mountains to 13 points by my calculations and reckoning. I think that could well draw him level with Egan Bernal, so he might have an opportunity to wear that jersey, share the glory through tomorrow's stage. But it was all about stage honours. Look at that, at that moment you would have bet your bottom dollar that the bunch behind, at least someone was going to come out of it to contest the win, but it was a superb climb by Sean Bennett and by Tom Squinch.
Yeah, it definitely was, and I think more impressively really is this false flat bit up here, up towards the corkscrew, where I was expecting a lot of more attacks coming from the riders in the bunch and really chasing, trying to sort of distance their competitors and even going for, you know, trying to bring themselves back into to sprint for the win, but clearly no one had the legs to really make the effort to do so.
Yeah, when Haas stalled, Peter Sagan found himself on the front, albeit briefly, and he is not making a habit of closing it down for other people to take the win these days, is he? He's pretty much declared that he's no one's domestique anymore.
Yeah, and I think that's fair enough as well. He had to make a call at some point regarding that, because yeah, he's in a very strange situation. No one will ever ride with him. Everyone will race against him. So yeah, it's a tricky one to sort of get yourself out of as a rider and get everyone else to do the job as well.
Yeah, he's got a rainbow-coloured target on his back, effectively, hasn't he?
I don't think it matters whether he's got a rainbow or not on his back.
Well, that is, in fairness, that's true. It's been the case for many years, even the years before the moment when Tom Squinch began the world's most elaborate and spectacular and extravagant victory celebration. Just about hanging on, but that's all that matters. The victory going to Tom Squinch ahead of Sean Bennett. Caleb Ewan leads the bunch in behind with Egan Bernal safely in there at the conclusion of the third stage of the Amgen Tour of California.
California Stage 3, presented by Lexus. We are now ready to begin our podium presentation. Starting with
it's another haul of jerseys for Egan Bernal. Gives a pretty good chance he's got comfortable lead now in the points classification. He's certainly not been challenged in any form for the overall general classification lead.
Egan Bernal will lead this race into stage 4. Nice work by the Colombian rider. Tom Squinch gets the stage win, but Bernal still leads overall. Broad beaming smile from the young Colombian rider, who's going to have to get used to this. It's 4 victories already this year, 2nd overall in the Tour of Romandy. Stage win in that Swiss event as well in the time trial, and he's got the time trial to come tomorrow. It's a little lumpy to begin with, but I think you can call it flat, pretty much substantially flat. So mightn't play to his absolute advantages, but I think that Bernal is a real superstar, as Luke Rose said, and he can race on any terrain. Overall lead maintained at 25 seconds over Rafa Majka for Egan Bernal, with Adam Yates still sitting at 31 seconds remove. Antoine Tolhoek is handily placed in 4th. As we scroll down through the top 10, no real changes on overall general classification in among the leading contenders. So Caleb Ewan gets 3rd on the day, but Egan Bernal will lead into stage 3.